Good evening, everyone. My name is Isabel, and I'm a ComLead alum, as well as the program student ambassador. So on behalf of ComLead, I'd like to welcome you to our Student Round Speaker Series. And our topic tonight is content marketing and design and why they should matter to you. So it's a skill building conversation. And we're happy to invite people from Seattle Coffee Works and our speaker, Misty Weaver, today. It is a lovely evening here in Seattle. And so thank you all for joining us, taking your time to join us today on a Friday night. Before we get started, I have a few announcements to make. So we are recording tonight's conversation. And then if you have the bandwidth, please turn on your camera. It's always great to see your faces, but do remember to keep your microphone off. And then we will follow Misty's talks with a Q&A session. So please type your questions into the chat box and I will collect them and post the questions to Misty for a portion of our time together. So first, we'll watch a short video from ComLead Consultancy.
Does the COVID-19 pandemic have you or your organization struggling to connect? The University of Washington's Communication Leadership Program is here to help. We have assembled our COVID-19 consultancy to help nonprofits, small businesses, and on-campus departments. We can help you communicate within your organization and with your audience, pivot communication strategies in the face of COVID-19, create videos and other multimedia assets, and host online events. As community builders and communication professionals with expertise in digital technology, our graduate students and alumni are uniquely equipped for this moment. We're offering pro bono consulting, events, and professional connections. Whether you're a business owner, an employee, or simply looking to improve your communication strategies, we're here to help you. For more information and to schedule a consultation, visit bit.ly/UWCOVIDhelp.
Thank you for sharing that. So now let me introduce our client first. So People from Seattle Coffee Works. She's the co-founder of Seattle Coffee Works. So please, People, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. At least one of my co-founders is here with me. So I just want to mention Sebastian Simch is here and possibly Oscar Garcia as well. So if you're not familiar with Seattle Coffee Works, we're a direct trade coffee company, and we specialize in very high quality coffees that we import directly from farmers whom we know and trust and visit. At least in pre-COVID times, we visited them every year. And right now, one of my co-founders, Oscar, is visiting farmers in Guatemala. So that's wonderful. The coffee harvest goes on. We have 4 cafes in Seattle. Right now, 2 of them are closed. We did have to go into shutdown and takeout only. We pivoted. We had a small coffee mail order business before the pandemic. We were mailing out about 30 bags of coffee per week all around the world. We've now increased that about tenfold. So we're now shipping out about 300 mail orders per week, which is great. So people who don't feel comfortable going out or who are elsewhere in the country can enjoy some really nice coffee, and people have been saying it's helping them get through the pandemic. So we're immensely grateful to the Communication Leadership Program, and I have to thank Marisol Morales especially for turning us on to it. It's been amazing, just the amount of expertise and advice we've been able to benefit from, and we've had 2 volunteers, Tiffany Chang and Katie Hall, who've really helped us with our social media and just thinking about how do we engage customers and talk to the world in a time when there's plexiglass and masks between us most of the time. So I want to thank them and thank all of our professional peers who've helped us too, especially at the GSBA and the BIA and Alignable, who wouldn't get through this without small businesses helping each other out. So thank you.
Thank you so much, People. We're also glad to have you today as well. And then now I would like to introduce our speaker today, Misty Weaver. Can you help us introduce yourself?
Yeah. So I'm Misty, and I've been teaching at ComLead, I think 3-4 years or so. And then before that, I was with the information school. I am a librarian. So I think that comes through. I'm really excited to share content design with y'all tonight. And I think that my general class is content marketing, and our next one will be in the spring and then again in the fall. And we always pair with real world partners and look at how we can do storytelling. And what people said about this time where there's plexiglass and masks between us, I think that storytelling and content design are such a great way for us to sort of remove those barriers online so that we feel like we are having really wonderful, enriching, and real experiences. And that's sort of the focus of my work for the last 20 years and the focus of my teaching. So it's really wonderful to be able to partner with Seattle Coffee Works this time and have them allow us to explore their world a little bit more. That was a really great thing. So I'm excited to share the whole story with you guys. Thanks, Isabel.
Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. And now we'll start our presentation today. So Misty, you have the floor.
All right, I'm gonna share my screen, and Isabel will be looking at the chat for everybody. I will be speaking, and I'm going to take some breaks throughout the talk and make sure that we get some Q&A going during the talk as well. But she'll also be monitoring and gathering questions throughout the piece tonight. But with that, we'll get started. So tonight we are going to talk about a specific discipline, a field, an emerging and new, in some ways, discipline called content design. And we'll be doing that in a case study with Seattle Coffee Works. We're going to focus tonight just on how do we make the experience of browsing our stories or our content as inviting and delicious as the coffee that we have. So with that, I'm going to start the first act will just be some vocabulary and some recommendations and resources for those of you who are really interested in this and want to dive deeper into the topic. But the first is, tonight's topic is content design. So what is it? Well, it's a really people-focused way of thinking about your story containers and how they all fit together. So I'll call it a user-based way of organizing and structuring content so that people can find, read, or consume. They might view, watch those things, listen, and act. That's a very task-focused, action-oriented design field. From Sarah Richards, the author of the book Content Design, which you can order from her directly, it's about using data and evidence to give the audience what they need at the time they need it and in a way they expect. So that's our overarching theory behind tonight's work. Now, our best friend when we're doing content design is going to be something called information architecture. And the book I'm going to recommend here is How to Make Sense of Any Mess by Abby Covert, meaning this stuff can be intuitive. If you like to clean up your junk drawers, then this is the field for you. It's a lot of fun and a lot of play, but we're basically going to look at the idea of how do we organize, group, label, and provide access to our content. So I love to look at this diagram by Murray Thompson whenever I'm thinking about information architecture, because it tells us what some of the highlights are. It's about classification and hierarchy. It's about finding relationships for things. It's about labels and tagging. It's about navigation, wayfinding, giving people paths through your content, maybe giving them multiple ways of getting to your content. It's about search. So a lot of what we talk about today, even though it won't seem like it's helping search, it's going to help search on the other side. So that will be part of our work. But to always remember whenever we're doing information architecture that really we're just trying to connect people with the information that they're looking for. So that's our goal. Our goal is to help people find things, right? So with that, I want to talk about a side of content design and information architecture doesn't get a lot of play, which is content marketing. So these are the stories that we tell to help people get a sense of who we are and to become a community. It's really important when we think about content marketing that it's always content that educates or empowers your audience so that you build trust, loyalty, and a sense of community. Very simply, content marketing is not sales. So it's not about making a pitch. You don't sell your products or your services. You provide something relevant and useful to your customers and maybe help them solve their problems. I always think about this content marketing, it makes them smarter, maybe it makes them faster, it saves them time, but it helps them get to know you and helps them feel like they're a part of what you're doing. And often when we think about information architecture, even content design, it's in the e-commerce space. It's how do I sell a product? but it's just as useful in the other space, which is how do I tell a story? How do I build relationships? How do I get people to come back? How do I get them to say wonderful things about me if they in fact love me? So those are all the places that we want to look. And content design and information architecture work in this space just as well as any other. The secret is going to be curation. So with that, curation is a librarian thing. So we're going to pull out our inner librarians and we're going to know what our collections of stories are, and we're going to help people discover them in the ways that make sense to them. So we're going to invite people to browse, and we want to help them find the topics that interest them most. So the first key as we get started with that is to send the right signals to people. We just want to make sure that everything is pointing them in the direction we want them to find. So humans, as well as robots like the Google bot, they are crawling your website to look for topics, the relationship between topics, and the relevance. So those are the things we want to keep in mind with information architecture. It's relationships and relevance. So content design will be all about structure. It comes before visual design or user experience design or programming. Got to do it before we do all of those things, because it won't tell you how things should look. It does not set the agenda of what the visual experience will be. It tells you what elements will need to be there, why, which is the most important thing, why you need those elements, and also potentially in what order. Content design really helps you make people's tasks easier. So the order of elements becomes very important. So when we have a really big site and we have a lot of money and a big team and a lot of resources, content design is the first step. And you hand it off to people like visual designers and user experience designers and programmers as the blueprint, and they can make based on what you do. But it works for small sites too. It works for very small teams. So if we're in a situation where we don't have a lot of time or we don't have a huge team, we don't have a lot of resources, it's still very, very useful to do content design. It's a step you do not want to skip, because it's a step where you start and you look at what you have and you know what it is, and then you can decide how to make it accessible to people. It can give you a lot of quick wins. There's a lot of really fun quick things that you can find in terms of structure, in terms of search, but it can also set you up to say what you might want to do in the future. So when you do have those resources, you have that time, you can get there. So content design, big site, small site, doesn't matter. It's a wonderful first step to take. So with that, that's the introduction. That's the vocabulary for tonight. I want to dive in and let's talk about what's going on tonight. We're going to talk about Seattle Coffee Works. And at Seattle Coffee Works, this is some of the wonderful facts that you can learn about them on their website. It's an amazing set of shops. So I used to live in Seattle and had a friend who was obsessed with coffee. His name was Jonathan Coleman, and he would just, demand that I meet him at the downtown location. And we would go there, and I learned so much from the baristas about, not only the coffee trade, but how to brew it, but also how to taste it. And I always felt comfy and invited and welcome, when I was there. And it felt really great to support an independent business and have great coffee. And I hate coffee. I absolutely detest it. I can't stand it. So it takes a lot for me to drink it. And any brand, any organization that can make me feel welcome, make me feel smarter, make me feel good, and enjoy a product that I don't naturally like, then that brand is awesome. So that's some of the things we can think about as we think about the experience that we want everyone to have on their website. Is this brand is so welcoming, and they're so smart, and they can make you so smart. They also have really, really delicious coffee, and you can take that from me because I'm not a connoisseur. So with that in mind, we'll meet them. Their homepage, premium, direct trade, living wages. So we're talking about something that is an empowering brand for everybody involved with it. Something to notice in the information architecture side is we're going to start with our top navigation menu. You can see information architecture immediately when you go to the website. This menu, you'll see a drop down as well in the desktop view. Want to keep in mind whenever I see a drop down that sometimes it's hard for people on their phones, especially, to hover over, or they might not click into something and unlock it. So the stuff that's in this menu might be something that people need to be enticed to see. So that's one of the first things that I'm going to look for. I'm looking at this word learn and saying, oh, that's a very content marketing word. So these are the stories that I'm looking for. And right now they might be a little hidden from people. So that's something that we'll keep in mind for our content design. And for today's talk, we're also going to have to keep in mind that we're using a particular content management system, and that's our boundary for today. And because of that, we're going to look for quick wins that are flexible and scalable, so that the things that work for Seattle Coffee Works today, they'll work for a lot of people, but we want to give them quick wins as well as things that they can look for in the future. So we've seen some information architecture. We're looking at the learn section because that's where I think the content marketing is going to be. And we know that right now, maybe not everybody's getting to it as quickly as we'd like them to. So we're going to start with some basic content design starters. And that will be first, we're going to use a content inventory and audit. That's going to be our first tool. And we're going to get to know what we have and where it is and what kind of shape it's in. And is it helping us achieve our goals? The second thing after we do that is to map or model that content. So we want to get a sense of where it is and how it's related to each other. And then finally, we are going to talk about a technique today called Bite Snack Meal, which is a writing for the web technique, which can really help us with any kind of structure for content in any kind of content management scenario, but also a really fantastic thing if you are broadcasting across many channels and you want ways to share your stories. This is just one of those building block techniques that can make it really possible for you to use a lot of channels. So this is a very quick content design process. We're just going to use these three tools, and we're going to discover what opportunities they can help us find, both for quick wins and long-term wins. And now we'll dive in. All right, now comes the first spreadsheet, right? So the first step in content design and a lot of content strategy work is a content inventory and audit. So I want to say first, website content inventory, it'll tell you what pages you have on your site, where they are, and sometimes more details, such as the type of content that it is, or the size, or the title, descriptions, keywords, anything that you might have in the metadata. It can generally pull that. This is all the stuff that Google is seeing. So you can find that piece there. Until you have an accurate idea of what you have, you can't curate it. So this is the first important piece. Content inventories are a really big field. There are some things to make it easier on you. There are automated tools. You could use Screaming Frog, especially if you're interested in SEO or search engine optimization. You could use the content analysis tool CAT. Full disclosure, I used to work there, so I was part of making that, and it was really great. You can use your Google Analytics sometimes to find out what pages you have and get some details maybe on how people are acting when they visit them. Another book that I'll recommend here is the Content Audit and Inventory Handbook. So for those of you who really want to become expert in this, you can read this book and become really good really fast. It's not everybody's favorite thing, but I find that with a great beverage beside you and a really good music collection, you can learn to love a content audit. And this one was particularly fun. So some of the things to keep in mind if you're going to do the inventory first, which is where you have, like what you have and where it is, there's some pros, right? It's going to tell you what you have, how much you have, possibly the URL structure, which could give you some signs of things that might be a little bit improved, and some red flags for search engine optimization. So those are the kind of things you can expect to get from an inventory, but it won't tell you what it is, if it's working for people, or how your users are experiencing the site itself. So it can't do those things yet, especially an automated inventory is not going to get you there, but it's still your good starting point. And once you have an inventory, you can move on to really making some evaluation. And that would start with an audit. So here in an audit, started to just sort of pull down, hey, here's some of the pieces. I'm only looking at the learn section today, so that's what you're seeing in the spreadsheet that's below. But when you do a content inventory and an audit, you could also do it by hand, meaning go to the website and you copy and paste the URL one by one into your spreadsheet. And it seems a little bit tedious, but it also allows you to actually see what are users seeing. and you get the experience that they're having. So if you're only doing a very small section of the site, it's worth your time to think about doing it that way, because you really get to see, oh, here's all the things that I could do to improve it. It depends on how much time you have. And in this case, very much worth a hand audit. I think we were at about 30 to 45 pages. So content audit, audits get a bad name, but honestly, it's just taking a set of standards and saying, does my content meet those standards? So the really important part about doing any kind of audit is to have your criteria set before you start and know how much time you have. And you can never fall into a rabbit hole. You just have to go, does it meet the standard or not? And then move on, because an audit isn't fixing things. An audit is just telling you, hey, here's some areas that I could improve. So you don't want to spend a lot of time on it. You want to spend your time on everything you get to do afterwards. So you do it as quickly as you can, because it gives you a nice health check of how your content is doing. So the first part, it's always going to be manual. A robot can't do this for you. And setting those standards is going to be your first piece. So for us today, I knew I was looking at content design, and I knew I wanted to make sure people could get access to the website. So I looked for a couple things. Was there a clear link into the page? Was there a clear link or a next step out of the page? And was the language clear and consistent? So those are the three things I looked for on every page. And that goes into your audit. So just three things. And here's some of the things that I found. So again, because I did this audit by hand, I got to look at everything and really see what was going on with all of the pieces. So the first thing is I'm looking at that Learn section, and I noticed, for example, that the Meet Our Farmers page and the Learn page were the same. So that was the first thing that I noticed. I was like, oh, that's an opportunity there. Maybe we could create another Learn section and use that in a different way. The next thing I noticed was, even though the page is Meet Our Farmers, the title is Direct Trade. And that's usually a signal. So when somebody clicks on a link, they want to know that they've reached that destination. So when the words match, their brain doesn't have to think about it too much. So we're going to try to do a lot of things with signals today. And what I was looking for when I was doing the audit is a lot of looking for, how can I just make it easier for people? How can I basically make them not have to think? I think there's a famous book by Steve Krug called Don't Make Me Think, which was an early UX book, and it was probably highly influential on me. So I'm looking for those things of, what's the pattern recognition? What's the science? How can I just make it easier for people to move through quickly, know where they are? So the next thing I'll see on that same kind of clear and consistent language is the word producers. But I'm on the Meet a Farmers page, and I looked at the page and I realized farmer wasn't here. So a lot of people, what could happen is they didn't see the word farmer. They might back out and think, I didn't actually get to the right page. So that's what we mean by clear and consistent language and signals. And then another piece here at the bottom, something that was a little missing, is, what are the names of these people? Should I click on them? Because there wasn't a signal to me that I could click on them. It might be a missed opportunity. So people might not be clicking on the biographies of these farmers because they don't know that they can. And that's actually something that Facebook was able to discover and share a lot of their research, is when you have an image and a word, people are much more likely to click. They're not as likely to click with just an image, and especially internationally, even more so. So I think people are a little skeptical. So we want to keep all of those kind of behavioral science pieces in mind. And ultimately, as an auditor, you're just looking for clear and consistent language. And those are the places that you can find those really good quick wins to help them out. But there is something behind it. So with that, I'm just going to say, from the audit, I will tell you what the quick wins were for this small section of this website. One, we could add something called a directory page. So a directory page is not a thing that really exists, by the way. There's a million different words for it. Everybody calls it whatever they want to call it. A landing page, people call it, or a menu page. Everybody's got their own name for it. I'm going to call it a directory page today, and I will show you examples of what I mean. Meaning, I would like this to be a page to direct people places. So for our Learn section, we could actually have a Learn page there, and maybe we would use it as a directory to tell them, hey, what else is going on in this section of our site, to entice them to browse and to choose which topics are relevant and interesting to them. So that's a directory page. We also noticed that we could add more clear and consistent language across all of our pages. So page titles are going to be really important. Any titles, any headings on the page, and adding text or hyperlinks to the images. Those are some really basic pieces that can really amazingly strengthen the browsing experience of our site, as well as the search experience of our site. So it may seem small, but it's actually a big win for a small fix. So I really like that. And then finally, I also noticed as we looked, and we'll dive into this a little bit later, how we could revise any of the pages so that they're consistent. And that really gets to the heart of content design. We go past information architecture and start making Bite Snack Meal matter more to us. So that's what happened with the audit. Before I go into the next section, I will stop for questions, but the next section is when we're going to start visualizing some of this. So it's not fun to look at other people's spreadsheets for a talk, but I want you guys to kind of know, where do we come from? Where are we going next? And here are the quick wins that we found. So Isabel, should I do anything, or shall we move on and look at pictures?
I think we're all good. We can move on.
Yeah, all right, let's look at some pictures, y'all. So you did an inventory and an audit, but it's so much easier if you visualize this stuff. And that's where I think some tools are really going to come in handy for you. One is a sitemap. So that's knowing what you have and where it is on your site and what its relationships are. But another idea that's really strong in content design, and I think if you read the book and you can read articles about it, is a content model, which would give us even more information about how topics are related to each other. So for Seattle Coffee Works, I thought I would mix them up a little bit and show you a little bit of the relationship that I found from looking at the content. So the first thing is we have a learn page. We realized there was no content on it, so that's opportunity. We could put a directory page there. And there are 3 sections. There's a Meet the Farmer section, a Brew Guide section, and an authenticity report. So the authenticity report is usually showing the latest one, but we also have previous reports. So those aren't currently linked, but they exist. So that's one of the wonderful things an inventory can show you, is when you have pages that are still out there on your site and Google knows they're out there and will take people to them, but you don't necessarily have them linked anymore. So that can just help you clean that kind of stuff up right away and make your intentional decisions about it. Like, you get to decide how that should be organized. Brew guides, that's a 1-page piece, which is actually organized with a sort of Bite Snack Meal going for it and following the same patterns. But then Meet the Farmer, that was the one I was really excited about, because it says so much about what Seattle Coffee Works is, who it is, and why you should be excited to be a part of it. And so that's the section that we really want to invite people into first, right? From that, you'll find why this is not a sitemap is because there are so many farmers that there's multiple. So for each profile of a farmer, it leads to a coffee that you can buy from them. So that's a relationship that I want to maintain, and maybe a relationship that I want to emphasize as we're going through the content design. So this is sort of a visualization of some of the things that I found in the content inventory and audit, but this is the world as it is now. So the next piece we are going to do will be when we create those directory pages to use a technique called Bite Snack Meal. Bite Snack Meal is from Writing for the Web. It gives us reusable content elements, but it's pretty straightforward. A bite is basically your title. A snack would be sort of a summary of it, to possibly a short text or a video or an image. And then it will lead people to the whole article or the meal. The way I always look at it is a bite is like saying, hi, I'm here. I have what you're looking for. And a snack is like really pulling them in, a little bit of a amuse-gueule, amuse-bouche. And it's saying, you would really like more of this. And then they'll come down, sit down with you and have that full meal. So we're really going to lead people in, entice them in by sort of breaking down our meal into really relevant bites and snacks that would drive people towards it. So I had to think about directory pages and the bite and the snack. And for the last project that we had a similar situation. We had an older system. I think it was 7 different applications and content management systems, and all hand coded. So we had to come up with a way to help people get through the site, but it was buried 5 levels deep on a much larger site. So how did you showcase what it's like to ride the ferries? And what we did with that was to create these directory pages. So you can see here, and we used a lot of Bite Snack Meal to make it happen. So online tickets is the bite. That's the title of the page that we're linking to. One of the things we're going to keep in mind with our bites is we really want those titles to match. Once they get to that page, it should say online tickets at the top of the page. The snack, though, it actually makes a really big difference. When you put just a picture and a word, sometimes people just don't feel enticed to click it. So a little bit more, like a very relevant picture and a snappy little phrase, can make all the difference of helping someone say, oh yeah, that is totally what I'm interested in, or I didn't know I was interested in that. Now I'm really sold, and they will follow it for you. So buy your tickets online on our Wave to Go website, snack, summary, and image. And I can tell you these directory pages stopped us from having people go to the wrong links all the time. One of those pieces is that little summary can make someone follow a link in the way that just having blue text will make people go, oh, I'm not so sure. So kind of maybe keep in mind people aren't really eager to click on everything. And sometimes we'll need to give them a little context to help them get there. And everyone will be able to get a copy of the deck. And I think maybe Isabel or Evelyn can put it in the chat. So I'm going to go back to the sitemap, knowing that we're going to make these directory pages. We have this opportunity to make a little bit of change. So for our new Learn directory page, we can link to these 4 sections that can be still Meet Our Farmers, Brew Guides, the Authenticity Report, but we could also link to the blog. That's something that's happening at the bottom menu. A lot of people might not know how to get there. We could bring it up and showcase it, because if the Learn section is a place to learn about Seattle Coffee Works and be a part of our community and get to know us better, then we want the blog to come up there. So it's a possibility for us to bring that up. And everything else is just about creating that clear and consistent language. So once you have a sense of what you're going to do, you're going to create directory pages, you're going to fix language across the site. It's really a good time to stop and brainstorm. Once you've done an inventory and you've mapped everything out, you really want to think about, what do you want to get rid of? What do you no longer need to carry with you on the site? Because weeding and keeping your site as clean as possible is one of the best experiences that you can give people, right? It's a sort of general maintenance of gardening. Second piece, you can think about what to improve. We mentioned some of the quick wins, the things we could improve today. We just add some clear and consistent language, and to our hyperlinks especially, and we'll probably get a lot of jazz out of that. We could also think about what to add. So for example, it's a great time after you've kind of cleaned up your site to be thinking, are there other topics I'd like to explore here? You can look through your blog and say, are there things that keep repeating that we should really showcase? And you could fit a few more topics onto your section or pages. So what you get rid of, what you improve, what you add, and any other observations that you have. So this would normally be a time where I would definitely stop and I'd start collaborating again. I'd start talking to people about, here's what we found. Where do we want to grow? And that way you don't spend any time improving content that you wanted to get rid of. You don't spend any time improving content that you don't need anymore. You can really focus on what your initiatives are going forward in the future, what you think is going to be best for your audience as well as for your company or organization. So after you've done your pause, someone is asking about tools for sitemap. We're at a perfect break for that. I have no clue anymore. There are so many tools out there. I use Miro, which is just a free, it's not always free, but a post-it note sort of experience. I know a lot of the time it's really about which one you feel comfortable with. It really depends on the size of what you're working with, but I really like to do this work with post-it notes or whiteboards. I like to be able to physically move things around and see relationships. So using something like Miro, which is a whiteboarding tool, is really important to me. A lot of the other tools that are out there are meant for you when you're done with your sitemap and you need to present it to a client and it needs to look really fancy, or you need to present it to the programming team and it needs to be annotated. They're not there to help you brainstorm or think or be creative. So I think finding a tool that lets you feel flexible is really important. So for me, it's pencils and paper, or it's Post-it notes, or it's a whiteboarding tool. So I find that those things are the best. So with that in mind, let's get to making stuff happen. We are going to do some content design now, and we're going to talk about Bite Snack Meal. And I just want you guys to know that I have made some copy changes to the sites in the next few slides. I did run them by people, so they're not terrible, but they are not the final copy. This is, in a content design phase, would not be writing final copy. I'm just writing dummy copy to make sure that I'm getting the pieces correct. And then we would go and do an actual writing cycle. So I'm just working on the design right now. So I'm going to use dummy copy. But here's a basic content design. So we want a directory page for our Learn section. All design needs patterns. So the pattern that I would be looking here is, okay, I want a big headline at the top. Learn how direct trade coffee thrives. Learn. This is the Learn page. Learn is the first word, and then the rest of it should just follow what you're going to learn. If you go to any one of these links, this is what you'll learn. So people and her team will rewrite this stuff, but that's just the basic idea. Learn is the word I wanted to connect to. And then after that, what will they learn, basically? And then there's 4 stories, and you could organize, again, content design doesn't tell you anything about what it would look like. Doesn't have anything to do with what the final experience will be, but it does tell you what the elements are. So in this one, I'm looking at 4 kind of cards. Meet our farmers. See who produces our delicious brews, and then there will be an image. That could be an image of a farmer. I will again talk to the team about what we think is best there for that. Brew guides, find instructions for your perfect cuppa. See, that's how you know I wrote it and people didn't write it. That's how you know, because I would say that. Authenticity report, our value in actions. Image, visit the blog, the latest stories to sip or slurp up. Yes, again, so making it dummy copy, and especially sometimes when I'm writing dummy copy, and be careful. Like, luckily, the thing is, I'm not writing this on their website right now. I'm just putting it in a thing for people to discuss. And I'm telling you yet again, this is not the writing. I will make it a little silly, thinking, okay, no one would ever put that on their website, but you have to be really careful. So never put your dummy copy on your website. Just wait, don't publish until you've got the real copy in there, because it will get there somehow. And I learned that because I used to use all Simpsons quotes as dummy copy, and yeah, one of them made it in, and we shouldn't have let that happen. Then you have to check your site all the time to make sure that they don't slip. So you learn not to live edit, basically, is what I'm saying. You learn to take this step instead, which is, this is the design step. Later, I will do the writing step. The important thing I want you guys just to see real quick is these things are all even. They're all matched. That's the piece I want to have. I don't want the lines to go over 2, so I'm going to have to keep that copy pretty short. It's going to start with the title of the page. It's going to have a little snack here, and then it will have an image, and there'll be, each of them will get equal space around them. And then you could also be talking to each other about what order you want things to be in right now. So I put meet our farmers first, because I thought that was the most robust section, had the most potential, but you might decide your blog goes first, or your authenticity report. So it's a good opportunity, again, for the team to discuss, what do we want to be on top? And sometimes you might make that decision based on your analytics, meaning you looked at what is happening on your website and you said, this is the most popular, so I will put it on top because I know that's what people are coming for most of the time. So those are kind of things that can help you. And then finally, just keep in mind that structure is always flexible. So I made a bite snack meal on the other page that had a title and then a sentence and then an image, but it could go the other way. You could have a title and then an image and then a sentence. So each of those elements could move around. And again, you talk with your team about the best way to do that. One of the things I like about doing bite snack meal, especially with title, image, summary piece, is that on a cell phone, it might choose to, you could have it programmed so that it does not show the image, so that those people are just getting a bite and a snack. So it's just a fantastic way of sort of breaking your content down to elements that will work on a variety of different devices. Once you've done it for everything, it's really easy again for you to put it out. Also, these little bites and snacks make fantastic social media posts. So there's a lot that you get out of doing this one small exercise of making bites and snacks for all of your important pages. It won't just be for a directory page. You'll get a lot more value. So then meet our farmers. Well, they deserve a sort of subdirectory page too. They kind of have one right now, because when you get to the Meet Our Farmers page, it's actually a directory for you to go meet them individually. So we'll think about what could happen on this page. So first, direct trade with farm partners. Again, we're going to dummy copy, but I wanted the word farm to come out. And that's our title. This is our H1 heading up here at the top. And then we'll have some copy that will help get people interested, learn about it. And then meet the farmers who produce your favorite coffees. That's the second heading. It's an H2. So having meet the farmers down a little bit lower on the page doesn't really bother me, as long as my H1 says something like farm partners. So as long as, again, I'm giving signals, and the signal is farm. And then finally, for the actual profiles themselves, we can put an image and then a name and a country. So again, it's a bite snack meal for each one of those profiles. I don't know if it should be country. So that's the thing, again, where we would sit down and say, well, what is the thing that most people are excited about? Maybe we should put the name of the coffee there. Maybe we should put the type of coffee. It want to kind of make that element whatever we think our audience is most interested in. But what's really great is we can test out different things. So we can mock up some designs, show people, and ask them what they think is best for us. So it's an opportunity space. And if you can mock up some things pretty quickly, just using Google development tools. So for example, here's our direct trade with farm partners. Here's our text before our subdirectory. Meet the farmers who produce your favorite brews. And here they are, and their name and their country. So that'll give you a sense of something you could actually create and then send out and test with people, mock up, do A/B testing, which is where you show people, do you like it this way or do you like it that way? So there's lots of opportunities for you to see it in action and decide more, is that right? Oh, are those too many words? Should I design those images so they should be vertical? And all kinds of choices that you can start asking your team right now. So I'm ready to start talking about the meal. Does anyone have any questions about bites and snacks before I get over to meals? Looking pretty good.
I think it's looking pretty good, but
all right, good.
Question later for people.
Okay. Yep. So here we go. Here's our first meal, Mauricio. And we have an image. It's fantastic. It's big. I get a really good feeling about this person. It's a really nice image. They look really welcoming and friendly. I get their name, very clear. I get the name, I believe, oh, Pipo, I might need you to help me with this. I think this is the city, the farm, right? Finca Villalora Verida Alluvial.
Yeah, so finca means farm in Spanish. So you'll see a lot of our copies tell what farm they're coming from. That's the full name of the farm. And then Fredonia, Antioquia is the region in Colombia.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I speak terrible Spanish because I speak Cajun French. So terrible accents. I apologize already. And then here we have a lovely story about him. And then it says purchase coffee from Mauricio and Finca Villalora. So purchase coffee, that's great. I'm very clear what I can do now that I've read about Mauricio. I can purchase coffee. So it's very nice. And here's a map. So I'm showing you all of these different elements because if I decided to restructure it, I could pull them out and shape them in different ways and put them in different orders. But this is basically the story that I want to see. It needs to have all of these elements. So it also gave me something to look for with every other profile. Like, did they have all of these elements? Because this is a nice, successful story. So I go over and I looked at Freddie Morales, and it was slightly different. So it's a slightly different structure. And that's your kind of first sign of like, oh, okay, this is something that we can clean up. Okay, this is something that can improve. But it's still got a picture. We've got his name. We have the name of the farm. And then we have a back to Guatemala. I am going to say that so poorly.
Tenango.
Tenango. Okay. Rosma. And then we had the story, and then the map comes in, and then there's more story. And I didn't get a clear purchase link. And I would think that's the task, though. I mean, I want people to meet him, and then I want them to buy from them. So the task is important here in the content design. So the answer is, oh, well, this works really well with Mauricio. Let's make them all look that way. And then let's think about how we can link to our purchase. That will be the next step, the thing that we're driving people towards. So one of the things that you might consider here at this stage is you might decide that you would put a purchase link or a link to the farm or the coffee right away, and you could do it twice. One of the tricks that you can do to help a little bit more click-through value is to link at the top and then link at the very bottom. So you can sort of reflect the next step. What's important and useful here is when you have stories like this that are not full of links, then 2 links isn't going to overwhelm anybody, especially if they're to the same place. And even if you use some slightly different language, it will be okay, as long as one of them is very clear. Purchase coffee from Mauricio. So I love that as the ending of the story. But if we wanted, we could also add one earlier. We could also just link to the farm immediately. So if someone's coming here because that's the way they find the coffee that they want, because they want to meet the farmer first, and that's how they choose their coffee. Maybe that's what's happening for them. We can make it a little bit easier for them. But the wonderful thing is just watching this pattern of name, farm, region, map, image, and then maybe a 3-paragraph story really helping you get into their lives and seeing pieces about them. And then you can think about things as a team, like, oh, should we add some more images of the farm later? Well, only if we want to take on that workload. That's one of those things that we ask ourselves. So the first step I would say is well, no, let's get everything structured and clear and consistent, and then go back to our brainstorm and think about what we want to change or add. But we figured out what we want to keep. We figured out what has value. We figured out what we want it to look like. So let's just do our first step, which is to make our directory pages and then clean up our signals so that our language is clear and consistent. So the end of this process, where we did an audit and then we mapped it and then we looked at the bite snack meal potential, the first thing we do is we take our inventory and we make a list of all the changes that we want to make for each page. So we can put that into an editorial calendar, basically a to-do list, just to knock off. This is what we're going to change in each of those pages. And then I would start a separate template for writing that new copy. For a big site, I've used something like Gather Content, where I could get lots of people from all over the world to be able to come in online and type up their changes. But for lots of projects, I've also just used Google Docs. Just know that as you move things from Google or Word or any program into your content management system or to your hand-coded website, that it will add magical code that you'll have to strip out because it does a lot of formatting. So it's tricky. So you just never think that you can just copy and paste, that some of this effort will be separate. But at the same time, the reason I create a template is to keep people from live editing. Like, you don't want to just go into your site and make every single change. But the nice thing about sometimes having a template is that different members of your team can write different pages and different pieces, or you can just send it to someone as a form, for example, and say, hey, farmer, fill out this profile for me. So just remembering to have that separate space will keep things safer for you. And do remember to check things before you publish them and make sure they look the way that you want them to. And there's no extra squiggles given to you by Word or Google. And then I would schedule the writing. So that's my first piece, is the list, the to-do list, then a template or a space to write in, and then start scheduling the writing. So now to give you some of deadlines, who's available, how long you're going to give people to do it, those pieces. And then you can start writing and or designing. This might be where you're collaborating and you're deciding to change visual or user experience or even programming elements as well. So you want to be in schedule together. So you want your copy to get done before certain programming changes are made, so they'll know what it actually looks like. Sometimes that's going to be really important. You want to have your images ready for them. You want to have a sense of when everyone can come together. And then you could test it. So you could take it to people that you trust and show them what you're thinking and ask them A/B testing, things like that. That's an optional step. Or you can publish and test it by publishing it. And then afterwards, you can start checking your analytics to see if you see an improvement from where you are now to where you're supposed to be. I'm a big follower of analytics matter when I have goals for my pages and I know what I want from them. So that will mean a lot more to you. And you're like, oh, well, I want people to read this farmer page. And I hope that from reading this page that they will next purchase coffee or click on purchasing coffee. And those will be things that I'll be thinking about as you look at the analytics in the future. So with that, someone has asked if the CTA would look nicer as a button. That is such a great question. And the thing is, for content design, I don't get to make decisions about buttons, but that would be something a visual designer or user experience designer might bring into the conversation. And they might say that, hey, would this look good as a button? And then they can have that conversation of, can we do that? Is that appropriate? Are we going to be doing it consistently throughout the site? So in this case, the call to action purchase, the coffee, that makes sense as a button if the site was following that pattern and was already doing that. Not every CTA will be right as a button. And in fact, people skip buttons a lot, you guys. They can feel really pressured to buy. So that's why I actually mentioned this idea of mirroring, saying like you could say purchase or link up above and you could say it later. Because sometimes having just your call to action in real copy in your story gets more clicks than a button. So it just depends on where you are. But I just love that question because it brings up everything that you kind of have to talk about with everybody that you're going to be involved in talking about. So the question for me of can something be a button or not is ultimately down to what's the system do. It's not really a content design issue. So then I hand them and I say, this is what the next step is, and this is where they need to go. And then sometimes I'll be like, oh, well, that goes under this button. And that's the way that it goes for the visual design pattern that they have. So it's really about fitting the brand, fitting the system, and having those conversations, having those balances. And I like to mix, like I like to have some plain text links along with my buttons. But again, everything is really contextual, super contextual. So then for content audits, how do you decide what criteria to focus on? So why did I choose the ones that I did for this particular study? Why did I choose LinkedIn? So because I did my inventory by hand, I actually got to look at all the pages. So that was my first hint of, oh, here's some opportunities that I see. And in content design, remember, I'm really focused on how do we help people find, read or view or watch, and then act on information. So I'm looking for things that help people find stuff, that which would be hyperlinks, really clear access to things, search structure will help with that. And then I'm looking to see, is it directing them towards something? Is it really clear to them that they can do something once they get there? So that's why I chose the criteria that I did, because I was looking for a content design perspective. Just can people find it? Can people access it? So I'm looking for links next steps, and I'm looking for clear and consistent language. That's going to be the first thing that I look for. I think there are a million things that you could look for in a content audit, a million. So choosing the ones that you want first are really important. There was a lot of scope on this one. So like for us on this particular case study, we just wanted to use it to explore the possibilities of content design and information architecture. But people could do an audit with her team of anything she wanted, as if, does this reflect our brand language? She could go through and read everything and see, is this the word choice that we want? Are these the images that we want? So you could do a brand audit for that. Or you could do, a million things. So I chose mine based on the scope of the project, the principles of content design, and how much time we had as well. So it helped to be consistent with, oh, we don't have 6 months for me to look at this website every day. You'll think about things like that. You want to move forward pretty quickly so you can start fixing them. Yeah. And then I see a question about, is there any particular software that you use for templates or designing websites? I don't have any particular preferences. Sorry to skip through here, you guys. I'm going to come here. But I think there are a lot out there, and like everybody has their own choices of what they want to use. I am fond of Google developer tools, meaning I like to go in there and kind of see what's going on with all of the copy and the HTML code behind a website, because that's where I started, and then being able to make quick changes to it. I do a lot of my designs on whiteboards or Miro with whiteboarding tools because I am a content designer. So I hand that off to visual designers who make it snap. And I also do a lot of work in spreadsheets, which I hand to programmers who make it happen. So my work is always a combination of a spreadsheet, which has the structure of the site, of how it's going to be built, and then diagrams on copious amounts of drawings, just actual drawings of what the content design elements will be. And if we have to get a little fancier than that, we might use Google to draw or design it. But I'll use Miro a lot to just sort of show people what relationships are, to do little mini designs in there. I think that content design by nature needs to be cheap and fast and scrappy. It's one of my favorite words for this work, because we are not going to do the actual pixels or the actual code. So that does mean we want to be a little bit flexible, and things like drawing, just drawing, can make a huge difference. How do you ensure the updated site maintains or improves accessibility standards? So one of the things I like about having a content inventory is, when you get that realization of this is what we have, and you turn into an editorial calendar if this is what you're going to fix. You could also add we're going to start checking every month. We're going to make sure we update these pages, or maybe you'll do every 3 months, or maybe you'll do every 6 months, or maybe you'll do every year. But you can actually start to create a maintenance schedule within your organization. When you have it on a schedule, maybe you'll especially do something rolling, like we'll do farmers this quarter, we'll do authenticity reports. We know when they come out, so we'll know when that time is. We can schedule it, and then it's no longer back work. It's just sort of, oh yeah, we take about 4 to 8 hours and we put that aside to maintain this over that. And as far as meeting the accessibility standards, so content design obviously doesn't get into the technical pieces that are going to help with accessibility, but it helps with all the signals. So whenever you do things that make clearer signals, clear, consistent language on your site, it is going to improve things for search engines and for accessibility. As far as maintaining those standards or improving the accessibility standards, you are going to have to think technically. You're going to be talking to programmers and designers, because content doesn't necessarily make those physical changes. It's just those first pieces. And it's a lot easier for your designers and for your programmers to make things accessible when you are handing them a content design. So if I'm giving someone something simple like this, and I'm showing them this is what we have, this is what we have to work with, this is what the page needs to be about, then they'll be able to start talking to me about, what do we do to make this accessible? What do we do to make this visually pop? What do we do that? And my job is to really know about the elements and the order, and to understand what the user is trying to do and what signals. And I also, as the content designer, we often do own the copy, meaning we have a really strong sense of what should be there. And then we are going to probably lead the group of people who will be writing that copy so that it will stay in place. And we can do a lot for accessibility in that, by making sure the language is consistent, by making sure images are consistent. And everything else I would say is just advice, like of maintain your content. And that I would say by doing that on a schedule. I hope I'm getting across how incredibly collaborative this work is. And I think like people really knows this, because she has a lot of people that she works with. These are just not often decisions that you make by yourself. And there's a lot of pieces, but I always look at content design as a wonderful first step. And it's something you can do together as a team. There's not a lot to keep you from being able to do this, and giving you a wonderful place to have a conversation as a team before you move forward and make live changes on your website, which can be time consuming or expensive. And then at what extent is one-off or a point in time, like a snapshot, or ongoing iterative process, or a living document? Amanda, do you think you can, let me hear that question a little bit differently? I'm not sure I'm quite getting it. To what extent is this process for content design a one-off, or a point in time, like a snapshot, or is it ongoing or iterative, like a living document? I think I might be able to answer, but let me know if I've got it wrong. I think of the inventory as having the capability of being a living document. And when you do these diagrams, so say if you put them out on a Miro board or you have them on a whiteboard at work, we used to share a lot of whiteboards, that's a living document that you can make a new copy and start changing. So I would not usually use them as a one-off. Sometimes that they are. This instance, it could be. We could make all these changes and say, okay, we'll start over next time, because these are pretty straightforward, simple changes for today's talk. But you can turn both of these things into living documents. You can turn an inventory into a living document. A sitemap can become a living document. A content model can be a living document. All of your content designs can become living documents. And it's really about where you store them and how you use them as a team. So something like, for me, a shared Google spreadsheet, and I just make a new copy when we're ready to do our inventory, or a Miro board where we share those post-it notes, or even a deck like this becomes, I work in a lot of these decks, doing it like this. When it's not a whole lot of material, this is fine. This is a great way to work. And so again, you just save your original copy so you never lose it. You don't overwrite it. And then you can continue using it as a living piece. Yes, you could definitely do this iteratively. What you could change the next time, you start at the beginning and do a different audit. So when you look for different criteria in your audit, you could start a whole new world of what you look for in your next pieces. Yeah. So I think I'll just give you guys, it's 7:04, and I like to go long. I'm gonna give you guys the last pieces, and we can open up for more questions. But to sort of in closing tonight, so I'm gonna say that content design is experience design. Content design is an incredibly important part of user experience design. And the wonderful thing to do is to do it first. So I look at how awesome, this is the Ballard shop, I believe, which I haven't been to, people, because I've been gone for so long. So I will go there as soon as I can. It is so lively and inviting. And we just want to think about how our website can draw people in as much as your physical space does. When we offer more ways than just our navigation menu, our top and bottom navigation menu on our website to get to our stories, it's like having our staff there to greet people and to answer their questions. So it just gives you more ways to invite people. And we have a study tonight. We just saw a quick win study in content design. But the takeaway I'd like you all to think about is, what signals are you sending? That's what you can look for when you decide to do something like this. Maybe you'll do an inventory, maybe you'll do some mapping. But whenever you're reviewing the content that you have now and you're thinking about how it can be improved, or you're thinking about how you can do content in the future, keep in mind those signals. Consistent language and even the placement of your hyperlinks are a great place to start, and they will make a really big difference to your content design. They are signposts. They are helping people navigate. They help people find their way. And these content design tools, an inventory and an audit, a sitemap, content modeling, or bite snack meal, they can all lead to very quick improvements, which you can make right away, but they will also give you space to review and to dream bigger and brighter ideas, whether that's going to be, should we start adding buttons for our purchases? Would that be exciting? Can we do that? Or how are we going to maintain this process and do a different set of improvements every 3 months? Those kinds of things can all be a part of that conversation. So it will help you make some quick wins, but it will also help you be organized to make bigger, I think, bigger decisions in the future. So that was our talk today. So I'll leave with this screen, and Evelyn or Isabel, I think you could probably send people the slide deck link again. But I did also want to make some links available in front of you to the ComLead YouTube channel and First Friday and the consultancy page. So now I will finish with the final questions.
Yeah, so I do want to be mindful about our time here. We do have a few questions. So I think the first one is from a student. It's for people. It's pretty exciting because they use Seattle Coffee Works as their marketing assignment 2 weeks ago. And I think the question that our student has is maybe you can share a bit about what did Seattle Coffee Works do during the pandemic to survive, or the challenges that you guys have faced, and how did you overcome those?
Well, we're still in the midst of it. So it's amazing to sit here without a mask on because we work with masks on all day long. And if you come into our cafes, which I hope you will, Ballard Coffee Works is open. You saw that photo a minute ago, and Capitol Coffee Works is open in Capitol Hill. Yeah, so what we did to survive the pandemic, like so many other small businesses, we shut down when we had to do that. We moved to takeout only. And we encouraged our customers to come and enjoy takeout coffee. Of course, we applied for grants from all levels of government, local, county, state, and federal. Things like the PPP, I'm sure you've heard of the Paycheck Protection Program. So one of our key priorities was to continue to provide employment for our team. And we have a very talented team of people who serve our coffees, and we wanted to make sure that they are financially well as well in terms of their health. So of course we did just what you've seen all other restaurants hopefully do, putting in place PPE, masks, plexiglass, et cetera, et cetera. And I should say that, all of us in a small business wear many hats. So I'm not just doing marketing, I'm actually the person who drilled the plexiglass and put it into our cafes. I fix refrigerators when they break, the plumbing, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one thing we did, was try to make our cafes actually work well during the pandemic and make sure that everyone would be safe who's going to those cafes. The second thing I think I mentioned earlier is we really pivoted to our mail order business. We're fortunate that we import coffee directly. So we sit on about 150,000 pounds of coffee at a time. And so we were able to roast that and mail it out to our customers. We feel really fortunate that we have a great and long-standing group of customers. We've been around since 2006, and some of those customers have been with us that whole time. So we just appealed directly to our customers and said, please, order our coffee online. And that's when we realized we really need to work on our website. So the website that you see, I have to give credit and hats off to my colleague Anastasia, who's with us tonight, and Joya, who was actually one of our customers. And the two of them just took on this job with no preparation, no budget, pretty much no guidance, and revamped our website. So what you see actually was created and released, I think, in September, is that right? Correct me if I'm wrong, Nastia. So yeah, Nastia is probably the same age as many of the people on this call. Same age, she's just a little out of college, and she revamped our website. So it is possible. So that was the second thing we did. The third thing we did is, and I would invite any of you who, especially if you're not in Seattle and can't come to our cafes, take a look at our Coffee Works Club. It's pretty innovative. And the idea is basically it's an annual membership. You pay a one-time fee of $29, and for that you get a year of free shipping. So it's really a way for you to get our coffee as often as you want, as fresh as you want. You can order it every week if you want. You can order it twice a week if you want. And that's a great benefit for people who are outside the Seattle area but want to have really good coffee. If you're inside the Seattle area and you're part of the Coffee Works Club, you get an added benefit that if you order the coffee online and pick it up in our cafes, you'll save another 20%. So we tried to, this is one way of surviving the pandemic, right? We tried to come up with this sort of hybrid model because we don't know when we'll be able to open fully again. And the Coffee Works Club is something that allows people to both get coffee in the mail and have a benefit if they do go into the cafes more often. So those are the things that we came up with. And we're fortunate that we have such engaged customers. I mean, as Misty was talking about the Learn section, I was thinking, well, who goes on the Learn section? Is it people who are just finding out about us, or is it our existing customers? And we have, I don't know if any of you follow us on Instagram. If you do, you saw that we're just wrapping up our dark roast panel. So we're thinking of innovating a new dark roast coffee. It's kind of a new field for us. So we wanted to have some testers and we wanted to get people's opinions about it. So we did an A/B test and people got to taste our samples and tell us what they think. So we'll probably do that with more coffees, and we have lots more innovations coming out. Maybe there'll be a new decaf for people like Misty, or people who want to drink in the afternoon. So that was exciting when you talked about like we could actually do A/B testing of new parts of our website with our customers, because our customers want to be involved. It's not just us who miss customers coming in and having that interaction. I think it's also customers who miss getting to come into a cafe and talk with us and really kind of geek out on the coffee and have that human interaction. So how can we make our website be a place where that happens?
Yeah, and I think people, one, it's just so awesome to hear about all of the innovations and pivots that you made and how many of them, relied on um, speaking with the customers that you have and helping them be a part of your future and finding ways to reward them and give back and then just make sure that the coffee is still getting around. And it's interesting to me because a lot of the time I have seen this happen where you have to fix some of the technology in a website and then you'll do this content design step, because it's like the first thing you have to do is get things cleaned up and working for the sort of the now. And then you're like, oh, I have some time to think now about what stories I want to tell. And yeah, how can we make the spaces inviting? And what's great is social media and a blog can be things that you have fun materials that going on all the time, and you can really think about your website space as really wanting to curate it and keep it small so that you keep it maintained, right? You don't want to have too much, and you don't want to have too much that you would throw away. You want it to be really special, so it gives you more focus to think about, well, what are those stories? And I love that. Well, who wants to learn about our farmers and why? And you could ask people, and you could do A/B testing. And you can just think about, well, what are the stories that, I don't know, I really do think a lot about like, what would I want to read if I was sitting down at your shop? Since I can't go right now and talk to you guys, what would I want? And do it, some days you're in for a short one, and some days you're like, hey, I really want to know about these farmers. And so I think about what I enjoy in a physical space, or I enjoy about being part of a community, and sort of reflect that back in how you want to tell your stories. So I think all of those little light bulbs that go off for you guys as you're ready to take the next step. But yeah, always keep in mind, like, your social media tools are connected, but they're also this other space that you have to do that. And I was just thinking, boy, a lot of people would really love to A/B test coffee. They would love
Email
to A/B
us.
test
Let me
coffee.
know.
Love that. But I love the idea that, yeah, you can also do it with some of your stories, which is just fantastic. I mean, I think especially for farmers, it's such a great, what do people want to know about them? So that could even be a thing that you could use social media to learn about what people want. So know more about you. So they can all work in tandem. They can all work in cooperative hands. Yeah.
I felt like going to the Seattle Coffee Works webpage would feel like going to the coffee shop itself. And then if we can't travel right now, maybe we can use the website to bring the world to us, the farmers. That would be so good. I do have two other questions, and then it's for Misty. So we have a question. Can you share a bit about how the audience, in this case would be web visitors, would impact the decision making for content design and organization?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really great question. In this particular scenario, we did not do an audience factor. And if we were doing e-commerce, like how do I get people to buy something? We would have done extensive audience testing and research beforehand, because there's a really big determination between how does someone buy something versus what will someone read. And I think the gaps are pretty big. So in this case, we did a short scoping early content design, and we didn't look at particular audiences and how they would behave differently. I actually just used cognitive behavioral standards. So that's what I was looking at. The group that I will tell you guys about, I'll put it in the chat while I am here, is the Nielsen Norman group. Has a lot of freely available research that they do with really quick tips about how to implement it, but you can learn a lot about how people see the world online and how they make choices. And those are the factors that I put into looking into when I do a content audit what I am reviewing for and what are the decisions that I'm making. So in this case, I knew before we started that I was looking for signals. I was looking for clear language and consistency because we were looking at information architecture. So the audience for me was basically basic pattern recognition. If you wanted to do more and make the site more focused on your audience, that's where Pipo and her team would get involved, and maybe they would do the audit. Maybe they would start doing A/B testing. Maybe they would do more audience research. We can do that after. But for right now, I'm just looking at clear signals and making sure where they're at. So we were able to do this one without extensive audience research. The audience comes in generally when you're trying to figure out how to reach them and what their tasks are and how to help them accomplish them. So in this particular scenario, I think I would say people, for me, I just looked at basic cognitive standards and behavioral standards. Basic, these are the best standards across the industry. The next step, I think, is you can take it further and think about your audience, right? And that's how they play into it. And I would start again with the content audit. It's how you do the content audit and how do you put the audience into that content audit. Content design is a little bit different from content strategy, which is what does the audience want? How do we get to them? But I think that content design is also very task-based and very user-oriented. So you can either work from here's the standards of how search works, here's the standards of behavioral cognitive recognition, or you can work from, hey, here's my audience, this is what they like, and let's go from there. Thanks, Isabel. I hope that answered it.
Yeah, I think you answered it pretty thoroughly. So we have our last question for today. The student's wondering if you would agree that all good websites share the same or similar structure, or is there any room for creativity?
That's a nice opinion. I think we can ask anyone what they think. I think there's a lot of room for context. So I'll call it context instead of creativity. I think all websites would be good, or all good websites are good because they have clear structure, because they have structure. So a lot of websites don't have structure, and that might not be why they're good. So like this whole the Steve Krug book, Don't Make Me Think, that kind of comes from that. Structure helps people not have to think too much. And it's easy for them to use, it's easier for them to find stuff, it's easier for them to navigate. So I would say a good site, in my opinion, a good site is a site where you're like, oh, I totally see what this is about. And if I click that, I know where I'm going to go. I feel comfortable here. I know what I'm doing. Whether or not they're using a screen reader to do that, they have that experience of feeling like they know where they are and they know where they're going and they can find what they're looking for. That makes a good website. To me, that happens because you have structure. But within that and how you interpret that, I think that's a very creative pursuit, but also very contextual. It's very much about you. It's your organization and your audience. When you match those two things up, I mean, they make a real magic together. And I think that's where you can be as creative as possible. And I always try to keep in mind, this is the website, but there's also, your social media channels are very important. And all of these ways of being a part of a conversation and having conversations with our customers, they're all equally important. And I want to make sure we have time for them all. So I think, yeah, good websites share. They're easy to use because people can find what they're looking for and they understand how to move through them. That's a good thing. But after that, I think there's all the space for creativity in context. Yeah. You don't want Seattle Coffee Works to look like some other coffee shop. And I don't like coffee, so I don't know the names of any other coffee shops. But she doesn't like, there is an Olympia coffee roaster here. I know that exists. I go there sometimes and I get shy. The creativity really can help you differentiate from competitors, right? So that's a space that's really important. But I think it's also creativity in your connection with people and your sense of community and your willingness to change and pivot. Your willingness to pivot can be incredibly important to this. being a part of that conversation, I think that's a very creative pursuit. So I even think all the structure work, I just try to remember whenever I'm working on a spreadsheet or doing a content audit or doing a sitemap, or having lots of back and forths with lots of people because we don't all agree on the direction we should go in. And it can take more time than we think it would, or I write really bad dummy copy, and all the things that are frustrating. I just remember, oh yeah, but we're going to have conversations with people and we're going to learn more about them. They're going to learn more about us and we're going to do more things together. And it really does happen. And I love seeing those things happen. And I just know that the work pays off. And I think that's something that you don't know when you start, that it's going to make such a difference for you in the future. And the reason is because you're going to help people find your stuff, which means you're going to have more conversations. So that's fantastic. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Misty. Thank you so much for people. So sad that we're coming to an end to our session today.
Thank you guys for staying for all of that. Thank you all for your fantastic questions. And I especially really want to thank people and everyone at Seattle Coffee Works for being willing to be our case study experience, for being willing to use this opportunity to teach people about the fantastic world of content design. And Ballard is open and Capital is open. So if you're in Seattle, go grab a cup. If North Seattle, Central Seattle, really close, easy to get to. Because I'm thirsty now, and I do miss y'all. And I will come up and I will see that Ballard store the next time I get to Seattle.
Yeah, so before we wrap up our event tonight, I only have like a few announcements to make. So first, I would like to thank you, our ComLead consultancy team, for making the event happen tonight. And also special thanks to our event coordinator, Evelyn Cool. This will be her last event for this quarter. And then we're gonna have Valtina taking her job. Thank you so much. And Susan. So we will be sending out the deck slide for tonight and also an event, the video capture, a short takeaway, and then a brief survey. So everyone, please keep an eye out for those items in your inbox. And then you are also welcome to register for our first Friday on March 5th. It will be to celebrate Conley's 20 years anniversary. And also don't forget to check out the ComLead's annual event, ComLead Connects. The links are available in the chat box. So if this kind of conversation appeals to you, consider pursuing a graduate degree with ComLead. You can also visit our website to learn more about our program. Link in chat box too. And then if you are in need of a pro bono communication consulting, please connect with COVID Consulting. And the link is also in the chat box. We have so many links to share. So we are going to stop the recording now, and thank you again for joining us tonight. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend.